I did not even know how to start this one without just shaking my head, because if you watched that race, you felt exactly what I felt. That moment where everything just snaps in an instant. 1 second it is tight, intense, the entire field thundering through Talladega at close to 200 miles per hour, everybody fighting for position like they always do at a super speedway, and then the next second it turns into absolute chaos that nobody could do anything about. And the worst part is this was not just a wreck. This was one of the biggest crashes in recent NASCAR Cup Series history at Talladega Superspeedway, with more than 26 cars swept up in a massive chain reaction wreck that erupted on lap 116 and immediately brought out a red flag. The kind of wreck that wipes out half the field in the blink of an eye and leaves everybody pointing fingers and asking hard questions afterward. This is the kind of moment that reminds you just how brutal and completely unpredictable NASCAR Superspeedway racing still is in 2026, where one tiny move at the wrong moment could take out an entire championship contending field before Stage 2 even gets properly started. Something happened out there that has drivers furious, fans divided, and people inside the garage talking seriously about where the line is between aggressive racing and something that is genuinely just putting everyone at unnecessary risk. And trust me, once you hear how this all unfolded and what drivers are saying about it in the aftermath, it hits completely different. So before we get into it, if you're a real NASCAR fan, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. NASCAR Nation Report is just getting started, and we are building this for the fans who care about the real conversations happening inside this sport. Now let's get into what actually happened, because this one got out of control fast. The big one struck on lap 115 of Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series Jack Link's 500 at Talladega Superspeedway, triggered at the front of the field when race leader Bubba Wallace received a strong bump from Ross Chastain at the end of the back straightaway. And if you know anything about racing at Talladega, you already know that things can go from completely fine to completely catastrophic in a split second. Wallace had pitted late in Stage 1 with a quick stop requiring little fuel, which positioned him at the front of the field as Stage 2 began, making him the leader and the most exposed car when Chastain's bump draft came in too hard down the backstretch. That tiny moment of contact at racing speed was genuinely all it took. The shove sent Wallace's number 23 Toyota sideways toward the outside safer barrier, directly in front of Cole Custer, who came down the track trying to avoid the impact, but the three wide pack all convened together at the same point, creating a smokescreen of carnage through Turn 3. Drivers behind had zero visibility and zero time to react. A thick cloud of tire smoke completely filled the track, blinding drivers who were already closing at superspeedway speed in the draft, and NASCAR reporter Jeff Gluck described the moment in real time as it happened, writing that he could not even see through all the smoke. Another voice captured it perfectly in real time. It was a parking lot back there. And when the dust finally settled and NASCAR threw the red flag, look at the names that were done for the day. Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Cole Custer, and Ryan Blaney were all eliminated in the crash, wiping out a massive portion of the field and many of the sport's biggest names in a single destructive moment. Just like that, in roughly 3 seconds of racing, an enormous group of Cup Series contenders was sent home early. NASCAR immediately red flagged the race, bringing out a 10-minute stoppage as safety crews rushed onto the track to clear debris and assess which cars could continue. The scene looked like a junkyard spread across the 2.66-mile superspeedway. And this is where everything gets even more intense because of what came in the garage immediately after. Drivers were frustrated, and they were not quiet about it. Wallace did not run from the spotlight after climbing out of his car. Clearly frustrated but composed, the Alabama native acknowledged his role in the incident while also pointing to the broader challenge of superspeedway racing with the current next-gen car. He said he hated it for his Xfinity Toyota team and that they cannot afford DNFs. But then he took direct responsibility, saying they need to figure out how to handle being pushed better and that he takes accountability for that. That matters because not every driver steps up and says that directly after something like this. But the damage was already done, and other drivers were not holding back either. Ryan Blaney, whose number 12 team Penske Ford was destroyed in the wreck, described the sequence as drivers just pinballing off each other, explaining how a chain of bumps among multiple cars ultimately turned Wallace's Toyota sideways and into the outside wall. Blaney was direct about wanting changes made to the race car at superspeedways, saying the cars are pretty unstable in the back, that they get tank swapping and ping-ponging, and that they simply cannot take that kind of contact at these speeds. Joey Logano delivered one of the most pointed and candid assessments of superspeedway racing in its current form, saying pick your poison, because with this car you either want to save fuel or you want to wreck, and right now, those feel like the only two options available. He compared the current superspeedway situation to pushing two basketballs against each other, saying they're round, they're unstable, And when you get to each other's bumpers, you have to be extremely careful, because they're simply not going to push straight. Logano added bluntly that with this car, the field has proven it cannot race each other at super speedways without wrecking, noting they got maybe 10 or 12 laps of real racing in before the big one arrived, which he described as about as far as he thinks they have ever gone. Sunday's crash now firmly ranks among the largest big ones in NASCAR Cup Series history at Talladega, just shy of the all-time mark set by the 28-car pileup during the October 2024 playoff race at the same track. This was not just a wreck. This was a reminder of exactly how dangerous and unpredictable superspeedway racing still is with the current package. One push at the wrong angle, one bad moment of contact, and half the field is gone before most drivers even know what happened. Now looking at the bigger picture, this crash changes everything heading into the rest of the 2026 season. Major playoff contenders lose precious points they cannot get back. Teams take enormous financial and equipment hits on a single Sunday afternoon. Momentum that took weeks to build can flip completely in the span of 3 seconds at Talladega. And it also brings back real tension inside the garage about whether the current superspeedway package is genuinely sustainable going forward. How aggressive should drivers actually be in these packs? That is the question that never has a clean answer at Talladega Superspeedway. Because the brutal reality is you have to push, you have to be aggressive, and you have to be willing to make moves that feel uncomfortable if you want any chance of winning at this track. That is just what Talladega demands from every driver who shows up here. But Sunday is exactly what happens when that aggression crosses the invisible line that nobody can clearly define until after the wreck has already happened. As a fan watching from home, it is genuinely tough to process. The very thing that makes Talladega the most electrifying race weekend on the entire NASCAR Cup Series calendar is also the same thing that makes it absolutely brutal when it goes wrong. Now heading into the next races on the schedule, all eyes are going to be on how drivers adjust their approach. Do they calm it down at the front of the pack? Or do they keep pushing the absolute limit, knowing full well this can happen again at any moment? Either way, this one is not getting forgotten anytime soon inside the garage or in the stands. So what do you think? Was this just superspeedway racing doing exactly what superspeedway racing does? Or did the aggression in the middle of that pack go too far on Sunday? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below, and let's have that real conversation. Now here's my honest take on all of this with no filter. I think this was 100% a classic Talladega big one, in every sense of the phrase. But at the same time, you simply cannot ignore the decisions being made in the middle of that pack, when everything started compressing at the end of the backstretch. Wallace himself acknowledged after the race that the situation was 50-50 between driver mistake and the cars not being able to take a push or push well at these speeds. But he took direct responsibility for not anticipating Chastain's run well enough and allowing that lane to get such a big head of steam. That honesty deserves real credit. Ryan Blaney made it clear after being eliminated that he wants to see changes made to the race car at superspeedways, saying he has his hand raised wanting a change because the current situation puts drivers in a position where they are either fuel-saving or running completely through each other. And those are basically the only two options this car gives you right now. And when guys like Blaney and Logano speak up like this after a race, I do not see it as blaming one driver for one moment. I see it as genuine frustration with a much bigger structural problem that keeps producing the same result every single time this field comes to a superspeedway. Blaney described the cars as pretty unstable in the back, explaining that they get tanks swapping and ping-ponging and simply cannot absorb that kind of contact at superspeedway speeds without losing control instantly. The margins are too small, and the consequences are too enormous for the championship picture. What I genuinely respect is that Wallace owned his part of this publicly and immediately. A lot of drivers in that situation would deflect, stay quiet, or point fingers at everyone else first. Wallace came straight out and said his Toyota was a little unstable getting pushed, but that the hit may have been too much, and that they need to debrief and figure out how to handle being pushed better going forward. That accountability says a lot about where his head is. At the same time, this situation is absolutely not on him alone. Ross Chastain was the driver who made contact with Wallace at the end of the backstretch, and the reality of superspeedway racing with his current car is that this style of ultra-aggressive bump drafting almost guarantees that something like this eventually happens. The combination of cars running inches apart at nearly 200 miles per hour with a chassis that becomes instantly unstable the moment it absorbs significant contact is a formula that keeps producing the same outcome. Logano summed up the core problem as directly as anyone could, saying the current balance of superspeedway racing is broken and that drivers right now are not just racing each other, but choosing between surviving or getting caught in the next wreck. Kyle Larson, William Byron, Cole Custer, and so many others were taken out Sunday with absolutely no chance to avoid it. That is the part that never sits right. Because yes, It is exciting, and it is part of what makes Talladega the unique spectacle that it is. But too much of the race outcome is being decided by pure survival rather than actual racing ability, and that is a legitimate problem worth having a serious conversation about. My honest opinion is that this was not just bad luck on one Sunday afternoon. This is the system working exactly as it is currently built. Blaney acknowledged he does not realistically expect to see any changes to the car at super speedways during the current season, pointing to a planned January Daytona test as the more likely timeline for NASCAR to seriously evaluate car components for these tracks. Until something meaningful changes, whether it is driver approach, car stability, or how bump drafting is managed at the front of the pack, we are going to keep watching versions of this same moment at every super speedway race on the schedule. If you are into real NASCAR conversations like this one, no filters, just fans talking honestly about what is actually happening in this sport, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to NASCAR Nation Report. After a wreck like this at Talladega Superspeedway, the tension inside the garage is only just getting started. A push gone wrong between Ross Chastain and Bubba Wallace turned into a historic big one that eliminated more than 26 cars and sent major names like Kyle Larson, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Cole Custer home before the race was even halfway finished. The garage is frustrated. The conversation about the next-gen car at superspeedways is heating up again, and if this is how things are going right now, something even bigger could be right around the corner. When pressure builds like this inside NASCAR, the next race is never just another race. It becomes personal.